Welcome to tonight's lesson, An Introduction to Rhetoric. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define rhetoric, identify the occasion, context, and purpose of a speech, and be able to identify the parts of the rhetorical triangle. We'll go through what rhetoric is, I'll explain the rhetorical situation and rhetorical triangle, and then talk about what SOAPs is. After this, you'll have a little bit more homework, which will be to complete the Google Doc questions that are associated with this lesson that you can find the link to on Edline. You should have out a piece of paper to take notes on and your reading packet open to page 18. You should also have the Google Doc for today open to the questions because there will be some that you need to answer as we go. To many people, the word rhetoric automatically signals that trickery or deception is afoot. They assume that an advertiser is trying to manipulate a consumer, a politician wants to obscure a point, or a spin doctor is spinning. Empty rhetoric is a common criticism and in times an indictment. Yet the Greek philosopher Aristotle defined rhetoric as the faculty of observing in any given situation the available means of persuasion. At best, rhetoric is a thoughtful, reflective activity leading to effective communication, including the rational exchange of opposing viewpoints. In Aristotle's day and in ours, those who understand and can use the available means to appeal to an audience of one or more find themselves in a position of strength. They have the tools to resolve conflicts without confrontation, to persuade readers or listeners to support their position, or to move others to take action. Rhetoric is not just for Roman senators in togas. You might use rhetoric to convince a friend that John Coltrane is worth listening to. Explain to readers of your blog why Night of the Living Dead is the most influential horror movie of all time. Or persuade your parents that they should buy you a car. Rhetoric is not just about speeches. Every essay, political cartoon, photograph, and advertisement is designed to convince you of something. To simplify, we call all of these things text because they are cultural products that can be read, meaning not just consumed and comprehended, but investigated. We need to be able to read between the lines, regardless of whether we're reading a political ad, Rhetoric is not just for Roman senators in togas. You might use rhetoric to convince a friend that John Coltrane is worth listening to. Explain to readers of your blog why Night of the Living Dead is the most influential horror movie of all time. Or persuade your parents that they should buy you a car. Rhetoric is not just about speeches. Every essay, political cartoon, photograph, and advertisement is designed to convince you of something. To simplify, we call all of these things text because they are cultural products that can be read, meaning not just consumed and comprehended, but investigated. We need to be able to read between the lines regardless of whether we're reading a political ad, a political cartoon, or a political speech. Consider documentary films. Every decision, such as what lighting to use for an interview, what music to play, what to show, and what to leave out, constitutes a rhetorical choice based on what the filmmaker thinks will be the most persuasive. It is part of our job as informed citizens and consumers to understand how rhetoric works so that we can be wary of manipulation or deceit while appreciating effective and civil communication. And it is essential that each of us communicates as effectively and honestly as possible. The next part is the activity that you need to complete on the Google Doc. So for the first part of the activity, you just need to complete your name, first and last, and the class period. Then you need to answer the first question. You need to identify an article, speech, video, or an advertisement that you think is manipulative or deceptive, and one that is civil and effective. You need to use these two examples to explain what you see as the difference. Please pause the video while you complete the activity, and then hit play once you have finished. Let's start out by looking at a speech that nearly everyone has read or heard. The speech that baseball player Lou Gehrig gave at an Appreciation Day held in his honor on July 4, 1939. Gehrig had recently learned that he was suffering from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, a neurological disorder that has no cure. Today it is known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Although Gehrig was a reluctant speaker, the fans' chant of "We Want Lou" brought him to the podium to deliver one of the most powerful and heartfelt speeches of all time. Please follow along with the speech in your reading packet on page 18. Fans, for the past 2 weeks you have been reading about a bad break I got. Yet today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I've been in ballparks for 17 years and have never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. Look at these grand men. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career just to associate with them for even one day? Sure, I'm lucky. Who wouldn't consider it an honor to have known Jacob Rupert? Also, the builder of baseball's greatest empire, Ed Barrow. To have spent 6 years with that wonderful fellow, Miller Huggins. Then to have spent the next 9 years with that outstanding leader, that smart student of psychology, the best manager in baseball today, Joe McCarthy. Who wouldn't have felt honored to have roomed with such a grand guy as Bill Dickey? Sure, I'm lucky. When the New York Giants, a team you would give your right arm to beat and vice versa, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundskeepers and those boys in the white coats remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a wonderful mother-in-law who takes sides with you and squabbles against her own daughter, that's something. When you have a father and mother who work their lives so that you can have an education and build your body, it's a blessing. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you dreamed existed, that's the finest I know. So I close in saying that I might have been given a bad break, but I have an awful lot to live for. Thank you. While in our time the word rhetoric may suggest deception, this speech reminds us that rhetoric can serve sincerity as well. No wonder one commentator wrote Lou Gehrig's speech almost rocked Yankee Stadium off its feet. So, why is this an effective speech? First of all, rhetoric is always situational. It has an occasion, the time and place the speech was written or spoken. The occasion exists within a specific context, the circumstances, atmosphere, attitudes, and events surrounding the text. And rhetoric always has a purpose, the goal the speaker wants to achieve. In the case of Gehrig's speech, the occasion is Lou Gehrig Appreciation Day. More specifically, his moment comes at home plate between games of a doubleheader. The context is first and foremost Gehrig's recent announcement of his illness and his subsequent retirement, but as often the case, the context goes well beyond that. Gehrig, known as the Iron Horse, held the record for consecutive games played, 2,130, and was one of the greatest sluggers of all times. For such a durable and powerful athlete to fall victim to a disease that strips away strength and coordination seemed to be an especially cruel fate. Just a couple of weeks earlier, Gehrig was still playing ball, but by the time he gave this speech, he was so weak that his manager had to help him walk out to the mound for the ceremony. One of Gehrig's chief purposes in delivering this speech is to thank his fans and his teammates, but he also wants to demonstrate that he remains positive. He emphasizes his past luck and present optimism and downplays his illness. He makes a single reference to the diagnosis and does so in the strong, straightforward language of an athlete. He got a bad break. There is no blame, no self-pity, no plea for sympathy. Throughout, he maintains his focus to thank his fans and teammates for their support and get on with watching the ball game. Gehrig responds as a true Yankee, not just as a member of the team, but with the can-do Yankee spirit of America, by acknowledging his illness and accepting his fate with dignity, honor, humility, and a touch of humor. Another important aspect of the rhetorical situation is the relationship among the speaker, audience, and subject. One way to conceptualize the relationship among these elements is known as the rhetorical triangle. Some refer to it as the Aristotelian triangle because Aristotle used a triangle to illustrate how these three elements, are interrelated. How a speaker perceives the relationship among these elements will go a long way toward determining what he or she says and how he or she says it. Let's use the rhetorical triangle to analyze Gehrig's speech. The speaker is a person or group who creates the text. This might be a politician who delivers a speech, a commentator who writes an article, an artist who draws a political cartoon, or even a company that commissions an advertisement. Don't think of the speaker solely as a name, but consider a description of who the speaker is in the context of the text. The speaker of the speech we just read is not just Lou Gehrig, but baseball hero and ALS sufferer Lou Gehrig. Sometimes there is a slight difference between who the speaker is in real life and the role the speaker plays when delivering the speech. This is called a persona. Persona comes from the Greek word for mask. It means the face or character that a speaker shows to his or her audience. Lou Gehrig is a famous baseball hero, but in his speech he presents himself as a common man who is modest and thankful for the opportunities he's had. The audience is the listener, viewer, or reader of a text or performance, but it is important to note that there may be multiple audiences. When making rhetorical decisions, speakers ask what values their audiences hold, particularly whether the audience is hostile, friendly, or neutral, and how informed it is on a topic at hand. Sure, Gehrig's audience was his teammates and the fans in the stadium that day, but it was also the teams he played against, the fans listening on the radio, and posterity, us. The subject is the topic, and the subject should not be confused with the purpose, which is the goal the speaker wants to achieve. Gehrig's subject is his illness, but it is also a catalog of all the lucky breaks that preceded his diagnosis. In discussing the rhetorical situation surrounding a text, we've talked about some of the background that you should consider, such as the occasion, context, and purpose, and relationships that are more directly related to the text, such as those among the speaker, audience, and subject. One way to remember all these things is to use the acronym SOAPS, which stands for Subject, Occasion, Audience, Purpose, and Speaker. It is a device that offers a practical way to approach the concept of the rhetorical situation. Think of it as a checklist that helps you organize your ideas rhetorically. This is an acronym we will be using throughout the year and that you will need to remember when you take the AP test. Now that you've seen how the rhetorical triangle works and what SOAPS is, it is your turn to put this into practice. You're going to read the Einstein letter on pages 18 and 19 of your reading packet and complete the SOAPS for the letter on the Google Doc. As you'll see in your packet, there is also a space in it for you to jot down your notes before transferring them to the Google Doc. There are also at least two reflection questions that you will need to answer after you complete the SOAPs and a place for you to ask any questions that you might have that we'll address first thing tomorrow. Have a good night.